for 1 year.
Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medalla signals more rate hikes to curb soaring prices.
The local bourse throw its weight behind the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund.
And analysts say investors and shareholders will be keeping a close eye on how the management of PLDT will respond to a budget overrun of about 48 billion pesos. Let's begin our broadcast with President Bongbong Marcos extending tariff cuts on key imports in a bid to curb inflation. Malacanang has announced that the President approved the recommendation of the National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA to extend the Executive Order number 171 for 1 year, that's until December 31st of 2023. EO 171 was signed by former President Rodrigo Duterte. Now, tariff rates on pork for in-quota shipments will be kept at 15%, while the rate for out-quota will be at 25%. Now, rice tariffs will be retained at a lower rate of 35% for in-quota and 50% for out-quota. Corn tariff rates will also be reduced to 5% for in-quota and 15% for out-quota, while the zero duty on cola will be implemented beyond December 31st of 2023.
The Bangko Sentral will likely continue raising its rates at its next two meetings in 2023. That's according to BSP Governor Felipe Medalla. In an interview with Bloomberg TV, Medalla says the likelihood of the BSP taking a break from rate hikes was extremely low. This as the Monetary Board aims to bring inflation back within its target range of 2 to 4% next year. Medalla, however, did not specify by how much the BSP will be raising policy rates.
But the likelihood of zero in the next two meetings is, of course, extremely low.
Do you see the need to do that in the Philippines? Take your policy rate above where inflation is?
No, because the reason we're way above the inflation target are supply shocks that we expect to wane. And our own forecast is that inflation will be back to 2 to 4% by the third or fourth quarter of next year. So in other words, what we have to do is do more to make sure that that happens.
Medalla also acknowledged that the Bangko Sentral must do more to convince markets that inflation will soon be tempered.
So we have actually revised a forecast of when the inflation will peak. But that's largely because of weather, shortages of fruits and vegetables. So on the other hand, the weak peso is no longer the problem. And we are also seeing fuel prices go down. So that's why we're confident that relative to our forecast of what inflation will be 3 to 4 quarters from now, our policy rates, our real policy rates are already clearly positive, but then maybe we have to do more.
Meanwhile, consumer sentiment declined in the fourth quarter according to the Bangko Sentral. That's on the back of pricier goods, higher interest rates, and the weakening of the peso. This marks the 10th straight quarter of pessimism.
The National Economic Development Authority, or the NEDA, is now expecting the Philippines to reach upper middle income status by 2025 instead of 2024. Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan explained that if the pandemic did not happen, the country would have achieved the Marcos administration's upper middle income target by 2024. According to the World Bank, upper middle income economies are those with a gross national income per capita of at least $4,256 or more than 240,000 pesos. But Philippine statistics data shows that the Philippines' current GNI is only at $3,300.
Because of the sharp contraction of the economy in 2020 and the depreciation of the peso, sharp depreciation of the peso last year or this year, that entry to that category of countries, upper middle income country, will now be 2025.
Increasing the GNI is a part of the Philippine Development Plan or PDP 2023 to 2028 to revive the country's economy. NEDA says they are finishing up their PDP consultations with the private sector and will make the plan available to the public by next year.
So what we have just done in the plan is to flesh that out in terms of the strategies, the programs, the sectoral targets, the legislative requirements to achieve those targets, and so on.
Let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. PLDT will implement a management reorganization after it discovered a multi-billion peso budget overrun.
We'll talk to a market analyst when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us.
You're still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel.
Heads up, motorist fuel prices are slated for an increase this Christmas week. According to a forecast by UniOil, diesel prices may see an increase of up to 2 pesos and 30 centavos per liter this week. Gasoline prices, on the other hand, may see an increase of up to 50 centavos per liter. The projected price hike comes after 8 weeks of rollbacks for diesel and 4 weeks of price decreases for gasoline.
The Philippine Stock Exchange backs the creation of the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund. In a statement, PSC President and CEO Ramon Monzon said a sovereign wealth fund would help develop the country's capital markets. Monzon said investments drawn in by the Maharlika Investment Fund would attract more fundraising activities and portfolio investments, which would contribute to efficient capital formation. The House of Representatives passed the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund on third and final reading last week after President Marcos certified the bill as urgent.
The country's biggest banks posted slower annual growth in assets and loans in the third quarter. The latest edition of Businessworld's quarterly banking report show that combined assets of 45 universal and commercial banks grew 3.07% to 21.5 trillion pesos in the July to September period. That's the slowest pace of asset growth in 5 quarters or since the 2.7% in the second quarter of 2021. Aggregate loans, meanwhile, expanded by 9.7% to 10.69 trillion pesos, slowing from the 12.6% in the previous quarter. This is still faster than 3.24% in the same period last year. It was also the 5th consecutive quarter of loan expansion. BDO remained the biggest bank in terms of assets with 3.8 trillion pesos, followed by Metro Bank and Land Bank.
Now, PLDT is reorganizing its management after it discovered an estimated 48 billion peso budget overrun from 2019 to 2022. The budget overrun represents 12.7% of its 379 billion peso capital expenditure over the past 4 years. Now, PLDT says it is ongoing internal investigation, quote, has so far not uncovered any fraudulent transactions, procurement anomalies, or loss of assets arising from the capex spend. Now, analysts say investors and shareholders will be watching closely how the management team of PLDT will be responding to this matter.
All right, investors should keep close tabs on how that internal investigation by PLDT will pan out and how worrying is the sell of which, as we speak, is
down. By close to 14% in the first 7 minutes of trade, just around 12% at the moment.
1,300 for PLDT. Now here for insights, Joey Rojas, President of Eagle Equities. Joey, good day. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Okay.
Yes, good morning, Danie.
Like Danie and I were saying earlier, the stock at least is down by 13%. How low could this go for PLDT?
Sir, is this a knee-jerk reaction or is there fundamental repricing happening?
Well, so far, it's knee-jerk because it doesn't look like there will be too big an effect on the financial. Yes, on the income statement, maybe not so much. I just saw a report somebody wrote in the Inquirer regarding based on an interview with MVP. He says that the additional depreciation expense on that 48 billion will be about 3.5 billion a year. Now, given that they make 32 billion a year, that's about 10% difference. Long.
Okay.
And PLDT at this even at last Friday's price, not expensive. So I think this might be just a knee jerk. It can go down a little more maybe, but I think people should start considering taking a look at this stock. They gave about this year already they gave out over 100 pesos in dividend.
Right. But budget but at 12.7%, I mean budget or overruns precisely happen.
Yeah.
It's not unusual, but at 12.7%, is that too staggering?
What is that number?
Acceptable?
Yeah.
You know what I personally I think happened. It wasn't noticed immediately. That's why we're looking now at 4 years, right? So it wasn't noticed immediately, maybe precisely because it wasn't maybe not on a per project basis. It was if it comes in trickles. For example, nuts and bolts line item. You spend 100 million pesos. Then you budget is 100 million. You actually spend 110. You look at the budget variance column, and it's in percentage. So if it's really small, then sometimes they just tend to, oh, okay, it's a little over. That's the way. But if you lump everything into what was supposed to be spent for a certain capital project, then that's when it became big. If you have everything up by 12%, maybe you wouldn't even notice it.
Sir, is this something that...
My guess is that there are some items that are much more than that 12%. Total is 12%, but maybe there are some items which have hit overruns of much more than that 12%.
Okay, but sir, if the budget overrun to you, as you mentioned, might be something that's less worrying. However, they have announced that they are looking into management reorganization. Is this, which means they're taking this matter quite seriously to that point, and they've announced it to the markets. Is this what is worrying the markets, that there might be a shakeup, and will this cause any uncertainty in the stock going forward?
What I first, the budget overrun itself, if it can be explained properly, is not really a problem. We have had wild swings in inflation over the last 2 pandemic years. There were some years that there was deflation, that the prices actually went down. And then this year, of course, that's where you see headline inflation of 6-7%. Aside from other things, because there are some things that are completely foreign, which have to be imported, and the prices have probably come up also in peso terms. So the difference itself, it happened. What was really disturbing is, why was there an investigation? That means that means that the difference that they saw is not in the normal explainable
level
variance. No, it's a variance, and then it's sometimes they can be easily explained by the exchange rate, etc. Pandemic, we had to pay overtime for, let's say, tower construction, things like that. Maybe this one could not be explained immediately. And then in another article, there's something about undocumented purchase orders.
Okay.
Does that mean that they overbought? If they overbought, are the parts that they bought usable?
Right.
If they're usable, okay lang. They can use it for maintenance. Or if they plan to build more towers, then just don't buy in the future. Use what they bought already, diba? Something like that. So what we really need is a little more detailed explanation, siguro from
and
PLDT.
Precisely that, you have PLDT still conducting an internal probe. But what results would probably or possibly lift sentiment here, and what could further dampen?
Well, one good thing that I noticed in the press release is it's a maximum of 48 billion.
Okay.
Maximum. Okay.
And that figure, according to the press release, can go down.
And significantly trimmed, not from the initial
120,
130
or
that
something,
was
around thereabouts.
That's right.
Okay.
So if it's significantly down pa from 48, then of course we have to adjust the net income figures again.
Okay, sir,
And then the other thing also is that they are planning to sell more towers next year. They've sold already half, I think, this year. Of 12,000, they've sold about 6,000.
Na-offset ba yung gains from the sales of the tower because of this
80
overrun?
80 plus billion pesos raised from the sale of the tower.
Okay. Sir, I have to ask, Bloomberg reported and even the PSE is now looking into a sell-off, a heavy sell-off that happened
Before the
an
disclosure
hour.
came out.
Yes. What can you say? What's your intel for us on that? And really, what can the PSE even do about this?
I was also surprised about that sell-off last Friday. Because it happened in the last 5 minutes before closing.
Right.
And then after closing, then the disclosure came out, which is very, very obvious that somebody knew about that disclosure was going to come out. So, the PSE's system is quite transparent.
Okay.
I didn't take a look yet, but they can probably go back to the logs easily and see who was the heavy seller near the close.
Okay, very interesting thing to be watching out for there, no? So the PSE should be on top of that.
Right.
Sir, is this an issue that is specific to PLDT or because of the pandemic or I don't know, difficulty to track down the variances in the budget? Do we need to watch out for other companies?
Actually, that's what I'm a little worried about. Because the same suppliers probably also supply Globe and
Oo nga.
Delos. So maybe they should be doing their own inquiry or tighten up their own budgets as well. Not budgets, but their own systems as well.
Okay, so
at least.
something to be watching out. Nako.
Yeah, because 5G and
Mahal.
the expenditures were mostly on development of 5G, and there are two other local companies working
Right.
on that.
Okay.
And there are not many suppliers who supply that type of equipment.
All right, now let's shift to a different topic here with the PSE, like what we reported earlier, backing the Maharlika Wealth Fund. How exactly do you think could actually this improve our own domestic capital markets? And how do you think the fund should be managed? If you have any opinions or thoughts on that as well.
Well, placed in the right place, yeah, it can be used as developmental. Like for example, some areas need development. Like I always say, mining is one of the things that we should really concentrate on. We learn in grade school. It's knocked into our heads that the Philippines is rich in natural resources. But if those natural resources remain underground, useless. So, for me, the sovereign wealth fund can be used to develop businesses or industries that really need to be developed. Of course, they should be done in a calculated way, so as not to disperse the fund in a haphazard way, so that it just might be wrongly spent.
And sir, they've mentioned, of course, there's no details yet, it's
Right.
yet to
Still
be
being ironed
formed.
out,
But the management of the fund should be independent and third party. And I'm assuming that there will be some sort of bidding process that will be going on. Have you in the community, in the securities community, discussed this with the proponents of the bill on how this could be managed, perhaps by different houses, or whether there will be a bidding process?
Well, personally, no, I've not been involved in any of the discussions, but I suspect maybe Phoenix or Investment House Association should be interested in this.
Okay. And finally, sir, before we let you go, almost the year end.
Right.
We were hoping for a year-end rally.
A
I
Christmas
was
rally,
hoping
Santa
for a
rally.
flat.
You're hoping for a flat.
That's the best.
Yeah. Well, maybe the question is this the time to be entering at this level, especially with all the headwinds that we are going to be looking into next year?
I think the stocks that were pulled down by today's drop in PLDT might be something that you can look into.
Okay. And what about the index, sir? Any idea
well,
on whether we
my
will
target,
be
actually, since the
regaining
start
some
the
of
year,
that?
My target for this year was 6,007.
6,700.
Okay.
We're not going to do that.
Oh, we're now at 6.3. How about for next year? How do you see things
Do you
panning
have a
out
target for
year?
next year, sir?
Next year, I think with the recovery of the whole world, and I think Asia will be ahead. We should follow. And then of course, if this really is the sell-off in PLDT, then maybe it'll look better from here, and it will be PLDT which might move the index higher from the current level.
Okay, so waiting on more details, of course, on that. We're following that story very closely. Thank you for your insights. That was Joey Rojas, President of Eagle Equities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that's it for today, December 19, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for your free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.